Channel Sports Central will be over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be for the LSU Tigers, a team that was 5-5 overall in the 2020 season. Overall, definitely a disappointing season in 2020 for LSU, as this team was definitely a middle-of-the-pack team in the SEC in comparison to how they were in 2019. Of course, this team won the national title a couple of seasons back, and so it was a big step down in 2020. But of course, if you look at this team in general, there was a ton of inexperience on this LSU team last season, and the great thing is for this team is that they're returning just about everyone, just about all their starters from 2020 to 2021. So that being said, I could easily see LSU being a big threat, right back to being a big threat in the SEC in 2021, and why this is what we're going over here today. We're going to go ahead and get started with LSU's final prediction. We'll be starting out with your season trends here today. Looking back at 2020, this team was once again 5-5 overall, 2-3 in their first 5 games, and then 3-2 in their last 5. So this team did definitely improve over the course of the season. They dealt with several big injuries too, and that was a big factor as to why this team just could not perform to their highest ability. But once again, overall, this team did play pretty well towards the end of the season. If you look at some of the wins that they had, of course, they beat South Carolina 52-24. That was a big win. Also beat Arkansas 27-24. They beat Florida 37-34. That was definitely, I'd say, the signature win of the season for this team. As Florida last season was a great team, one of the best teams in the SEC for sure. And for them to take them down, that was a big win there on the road. Also beat Ole Miss 53-48, which don't sleep on Ole Miss. That was actually a good team last season, and overall definitely a good win there. So, considering this team started out the season by losing to Mississippi State and Missouri, it was not a terrible season overall for LSU. And considering, once again, how much experience this team had, like looking back at 2019, that was a great team what they had. It was pretty insane looking at the talent that they had on this LSU roster in 2019. Joe Burrow, obviously, and Jamar Chase and all them. This team was insane. Clyde Edwards-Helaire as well. You can add him to that mix. And LSU, of course, last season just did not, once again, have the experience. But in 2021, this team is looking for real in the returning production category. Of course, you got Max Johnson and Miles Brennan both returning your quarterbacks. And I think it looks like it's going to end up being Max Johnson being your quarterback for next season. Of course, we saw both quarterbacks play last season. Miles Brennan got injured, which gave Max Johnson an opportunity, which he played very well when he was able to play last season for LSU. Put up just over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, right around a 59% completion rate as well. So 59% for a completion rate, that's not very good. That definitely can, it definitely can be improved though for him. And I definitely think moving forward, that's going to be a primary goal of his, is to increase that accuracy rate there. But as for Miles Brennan, put up 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions as well last season, 60% completion rate as well. So Max Johnson, I'd say, is more likely to get the starting position, but I can easily see it going either way between Max Johnson and Miles Brennan. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see both quarterbacks split time, especially in the early parts of next season. Both quarterbacks could more than likely start at some point in the 2021 season, but Max Johnson right now, it looks to be that he's got the better stats. He played and improved more over the course of the 2020 season, and also Miles Brennan is still trying to come back from an injury, so you got to remember that as well. But as for the running back core, Tyrion Davis-Prince, he's coming back. He was your top running back last year. 500 yards is what he had. Not a bad season for him. Watch out for him next season. Terrace Marshall was your top wide receiver. He is not coming back. That's going to be a tough loss there. Definitely one of the tougher losses on this team, as he put up just over 730 yards, 10 touchdowns last season. So he had a great season for LSU. Kayshon Butte overall played very well last season. He will be back as well. Put up nearly the same yardage as Terrace Marshall, just with a few less touchdowns. So overall, receiving core looks pretty good other than the loss on Terrace Marshall. Kayshon Butte is going to be a huge impact player for this team next season. Jamar Chase, of course, you had him a couple of years ago. He did not play much last season. If much at all for this team. So that's definitely something to watch out for. Racey McMath is also not going to be coming back, so just keep that in mind as well. But the receiving core with Kayshon Butte should be just fine. As for the offensive line, you lose one on there. You lose 1 defensive lineman, 1 linebacker, and 1 safety. So on the defensive side, you lose 3. So, overall, that's not a bad number at all. This team has got some great returning production for next season, and that was what we were talking about earlier. This team has got a tremendous amount of potential just because of how many players that they're returning for next season. Is LSU an SEC dark horse for 2021? Many fans of SEC teams other than LSU really don't want LSU to be good. I'm just putting it straightforward to you guys. But I think LSU personally actually could be a dark horse team next season, and I could see this team actually putting up a lot of wins as well. I could see this team being a big contender in the SEC West. Of course, you got Alabama at the top, which Alabama is always a brutal team to face. So I wouldn't really count on beating them right now. But next season, I could see LSU definitely at the top of that division. They'll be much better in 2020 as they were in 2020. I mean, once again, this team was just so inexperienced last season, and there's going to be a lot more experience on this team heading into 2021. As for your schedule for next season, of course, you got UCLA to start off the season. Interesting matchup there in Death Valley on September 4th. McNeese State, you got them after that, FCS opponent against them. You got Central Michigan then on the 18th, and you got Mississippi State on the road on the 25th. So obviously the Mississippi State game, you got to win that one this year. I mean, last year that was a wreck of a game. Of course, LSU lost that matchup, and everyone thought Mississippi State was so good for like a week until they lost their next game. But that's a very important game. You got to start off your SEC schedule with a win for sure, and that's going to be very important there for sure. Auburn, you got them after that to start off your October. And then you got Kentucky after that on the road, Florida at home, Ole Miss on the road, Alabama on the road. So that last part of October into November is going to be brutal for this team. I mean, Florida, Ole Miss, Alabama, all three of those teams should be pretty good next year. Arkansas, you got them at home. Louisiana Monroe at home, probably one of the worst teams in the FBS right there. Should be an easy win. Then Texas A&M to finish out the season. So you've got a pretty tough schedule here, actually. You got Florida, Alabama, Ole Miss, Auburn, and Texas A&M. All of those teams are going to be pretty good next year. And, of course, I mean, the only tough team that you're not really playing in the SEC next season is Georgia. So you're getting a whole variety of tough teams next season, and that's going to be the main, I think, opponent for LSU is their schedule. But looking at the September month, UCLA is going to be a win. That's going to be close, though. I think UCLA next season actually could be a good team. McNeese State, that will be an interesting one just because I think LSU could easily drop 50, 60 points in that matchup, but it should be an easy win for sure. Central Michigan, easy win. Mississippi State, I think that you go into Mississippi State and completely shut out, just beat up Mississippi State. I think that's going to be an easy win there for LSU. That's going to be a very motivated game, I would say, for LSU. I mean, just looking back at 2020, I mean, this team does not want to lose to Mississippi State again, I can guarantee you. So you'll be 4-0 heading into your October, which is definitely a great start for the season. I wouldn't be surprised to see this team start the season 4-0 at all. But as for October, of course, you got Auburn. That's going to be a close one, and most of you guys are going to completely disagree with me saying that Auburn's going to win that game, especially considering it's at home for LSU. I mean, if it's in a night game, I'd probably pick LSU just because it's at night. But the thing is, though, if it's the best SEC matchup of the week, there's a good chance it'll be on in the afternoon hours. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's going to make a whole lot of a difference, but it does make a difference. The environment's going to be a little bit different there. But Auburn, I think next season actually will be a sneaky team. I could see them upsetting a couple of teams next year, and I think LSU will be one of them. It's going to be mighty close. I mean, you guys are totally going to disagree with that. I already know. I mean, with it being at home and everything. But I think Auburn next season will be a tough team for sure, and they're going to be a tough opponent, no doubt. Kentucky's going to be a win. Florida's going to be a win. I'm going to give you the win against Florida. That's going to be a close one as well. But I think the Gators next season, they're going to trip up in LSU. I think Florida overall next year is going to be a good team. They're not going to be quite as good. They're not going to be quite as good in 2021 as they were in 2020. But I mean, Florida's also had plenty of trouble with LSU in the past few years, so I will give LSU the win there. Ole Miss, that'll be a win as well, but it'll be close. 7-1 is going to be a record heading into November. Alabama, obviously a huge matchup there, possibly could determine the champion of the SEC West, but I'm going to give it to Alabama. It's on the road, and that's always a tough game. I mean, in Tuscaloosa there, so I'm going to give Alabama the win. Then you got Arkansas, of course. That's going to be a win. I'm going to say an easy win for that one. Louisiana Monroe, also an easy win. Texas A&M then to finish out the season will also be a win, but it's going to be close as well. So 10-2 is what I've got LSU at, which, I mean, that definitely looks pretty good in comparison to the 5-5 record last season for this team. But yeah, 9-10 wins, definitely maybe even 11, are definitely possible for this LSU team next season. I do think this LSU team will take 2 losses for sure. The more I think about it, though, I think you'll lose to Alabama for sure. And you're going to lose to either Auburn or Florida. You will win at least one of those games, but you're going to lose to either Auburn or Florida at some point in that month of October. But that being said, that wraps up my predictions on LSU for the upcoming season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team, record predictions and all that. I do appreciate guys all watching as well. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys all later.